Opposition politicians such as Robert Kyagulanyi were detained and allegedly even tortured. But this lack of clarity over the facts does not mask the definite rising of concern expressed over increased repression of the political opposition in Uganda. The deterioration of fundamental freedoms of expression, assembly and association in Uganda is indeed worrying, as are President Museveni's efforts now to entrench his power by changing the law allowing a president to hold office over the age of 75. Over the next 3 years, before the elections in 2021, the international community must watch closely and call on the Museveni government to investigate all human rights abuses, uphold the rule of law and freedom of speech, and to fight hard to prevent election fraud and corruption. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Haybuch.
Thank you very much, President. Do we really want to be partners in crime? Because that's what we become if we remain silent. If members of parliament, if journalists are put behind bars, if they are beaten in detention and tortured and abuses of human rights, if this happens, then we as Greens cannot accept this. It has to be stopped. We as Greens stand at the side of Bobi Wine. He's not just an opposition leader, he's a figurehead for young people. He teaches democracy and peace to them. He fights for human rights. And his voice cannot be silenced. We demand the release of the prisoners. We demand an investigation into the incident and criminal procedures against those culpable, including the police. In cooperation and development with Uganda, we have to look at their own Human Rights Commission that they have established and support it so that it does not remain a paper tiger. We have an opportunity to exert pressure, and we must exert pressure. Thank you.
Gracias, señora Kyenge.
Thanks, Ms. Kyenge. Thank you, Mr. President. If Uganda is showing that it is a country that will receive refugees, 1.4 million refugees are there today, but we still can't close our eyes to events which undermine human rights. There's now the law of not allowing people over the age of 65 to stand in presidential elections, and President Museveni's been in office since 1986, and despite the fact that he's older than the law permits, he's going to stand in the next elections as well. And violence has broken out all over Uganda because of this. And the police have been at the centre of violence in political demonstrations and debates. And the arrest of Bobi Wine and other parliamentarians from the opposition can't be neglected. People have been injured and have even died. This is an attack on the freedom of expression, and we can't allow fundamental rights to be threatened by violence. I do hope that Bobi Wine makes a quick recovery. Thank you, President.
Gracias, señora Sánchez.
Thanks, Ms. Sanchez.
Gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you, Mr. President. On the 13th of August this year, the army and police of Uganda arrested 4 members of the opposition parliament, at least 2 journalists, and 29 people before local elections. They were also beaten up. The lawyers of the accused were told that those detained were tortured while in detention. This quite clearly underscores the violations of freedom of association and freedom of expression in Uganda. But President Museveni, who's been in power since 1986, who's been accused of rigged elections, still enjoys substantial Western support. Previously, he was supported for fighting jihadi terrorism, now also for delivering on our migratory policy objectives. In other words, Uganda does our dirty work, keeps out Congolese and Somali refugees who are fleeing war and misery. That's why they're partners. The EU is being inconsistent. The EU must